If you want to start a fight with an Italian, say 4 words. Carbonara is American food. Watch what happens next. You'll see a person transform in real time. The hand gestures will start. The voice will rise. You'll hear words like sacred, ancient, heritage. You might even get thrown out of the restaurant. But here's the question nobody in Italy wants to answer. If carbonara is so ancient, so deeply Roman, so embedded in Italian culinary DNA, why can't anyone find a single recipe for it before 1952? Why did the greatest Italian chefs of the early 20th century never mention it? Why does the timeline of this dish line up almost perfectly with the arrival of American soldiers in Rome in 1944? Today, we are putting carbonara on trial. We are going through the evidence, the witnesses, the suspicious gaps in the record, and the one ingredient that exposes everything. I'm going to give you my verdict at the end, and I'll warn you now. It's not comfortable for anyone who grew up being told this dish belongs to Rome. By the end of this video, you'll either agree with me and never look at a bowl of carbonara the same way again, or you'll be furious and heading straight to the comments to tell me I'm wrong. Either way, let's open the file. Before we get to the evidence, we need to understand what's actually at stake here, because this isn't really about pasta, it's about identity. To a Roman, not just an Italian, specifically a Roman, carbonara is not a recipe. It is a declaration of who they are. It sits alongside the Colosseum and the Vatican as something that belongs to them, was born there, and cannot be claimed by anyone else. That is the emotional weight behind this dish. The dish itself has 4 ingredients. Exactly 4. Guanciale, that's cured pork jowl, not bacon, never bacon. Pecorino Romano cheese, sharp and salty. Eggs, specifically the yolk, which creates the sauce. And black pepper, ground heavy, the way a Roman would tell you only a Roman knows how. That's it. Those 4 things. Combined correctly, they create something that tastes like it took centuries to perfect. Add cream and you will be asked to leave, possibly escorted. I am not exaggerating. There are Roman chefs who have physically removed people from their kitchens for suggesting cream. That is how seriously this is taken. So here is the problem. Here is the thing that keeps food historians up at night. If this dish is so ancient, so central to Roman identity, so deeply embedded in the culture, it should appear everywhere. In 18th century cookbooks, in 19th century menus, in letters, in diaries, in the accounts of travelers who visited Rome and wrote about what they ate. Food writers have always existed. People have always written about Rome. And yet, carbonara is nowhere. It simply does not appear. Until 1952, and even then, not in Italy. The first documented carbonara recipe was published in Chicago. Let that sit for a moment before we go any further. Let's bring the witnesses to the stand. Rome, June 1944. The city has just been liberated by Allied forces, and it is in a desperate state. Years of war have hollowed the food supply. What was once one of the great culinary capitals of the world is now a city of empty plates and improvised meals. People are cooking whatever they can find, however they can find it. Then the Americans arrive, and they bring their rations with them. K-rations, specifically designed to keep soldiers fed in the field. Inside those tins powdered eggs and bacon. Not guanciale, not pecorino. Bacon. Processed, smoked, American bacon. Now imagine you are a Roman cook in 1944. You have pasta because pasta is what Rome always has. You have nothing else. But these American soldiers are giving out tins of eggs and bacon, and the soldiers want to eat, and you want to survive. So you cook. You take the pasta, you take the eggs, you take the bacon. You add what little cheese and pepper you have in the house. And you make something that works. Something that tastes extraordinary despite being born from desperation. That bowl, that specific collision of Italian instinct and American supplies, is what many food historians believe became carbonara. not a dish designed in a Roman kitchen over centuries. A survival meal, invented in a moment of hunger on a street that smelled like dust and liberation. Here is where the Italian defense starts to crack. Food history, like all history, lives and dies on documentation. And Italian food history is extraordinarily well documented. The country has been obsessed with recording its culinary traditions for centuries. We have recipe manuscripts from the Renaissance. We have detailed accounts of papal feasts. We have 19th century Roman restaurant menus preserved in archives. Pellegrino Artusi published what many consider the Bible of Italian cooking in 1891. It contains hundreds of recipes. It is extraordinarily detailed on Roman and Central Italian cuisine. Carbonara is not in it. Not even close. Ada Boni published her definitive guide to Roman cooking in 1930, a book specifically dedicated to the food of Rome. Carbonara does not appear. The first time carbonara appears anywhere in print is 1952, in a cookbook connected to Chicago. Then, and only then, does it begin appearing in Italian sources. 1954, in Italy. 1954. For context, that is 9 years after the American soldiers arrived in Rome. The defense will argue that dishes existed long before they were written down, that rural and working-class cooking rarely made it into cookbooks. That absence of documentation isn't proof of absence, and that argument isn't wrong. It's worth taking seriously. But here is the counter to that. Every other foundational Roman dish, cacio e pepe, amatriciana, Grizia, all of them have documented trails going back decades, some centuries earlier. Carbonara alone has this suspicious silence. That silence is not nothing, not... Now we get to the ingredient that for me is the most compelling piece of evidence in this entire case, the one that is almost impossible to argue away. Modern Italian culinary tradition is absolutely categorical on this point. Carbonara uses guanciale, cured pork jowl, not pancetta, not regular bacon, not anything else. Guanciale specifically, and the insistence on this is fierce. Roman chefs will tell you that using anything else fundamentally changes the dish and cannot be called carbonara. But here is the problem with that argument. If carbonara was invented by Romans using traditional Roman ingredients, guanciale makes perfect sense. Guanciale has been a staple of Central Italian cooking for centuries. It would be the natural choice. But if carbonara was invented in 1944 by Roman cooks using American military rations, then the original ingredient wasn't guanciale at all. It was smoked American bacon, exactly what was in those tins. Which means the version Italian chefs insist is the only authentic version, guanciale, might actually be the adaptation. The refinement that came later, when Italian cooks had access to their own ingredients again and quietly substituted the American bacon for something that felt more Roman, more theirs. The authentic version of carbonara might be the one that came second. Think about that for a moment. Now, and this is important, the Italian counter-argument is not nothing. It deserves a proper hearing before we reach a verdict. The strongest alternative theory points to the Carbonari, the coal miners and charcoal workers of the Apennine Mountains. These were traveling workers who needed food that was portable, calorie-dense, and required minimal cooking equipment. Cured pork, hard cheese, eggs, pasta. The theory says carbonara, named for coal in Italian, was their working meal, developed over generations long before any American soldier set foot in Italy. It's a compelling story, and it has genuine supporters among Italian food historians who are serious, credible people. The problem is, there is no documentation for it either. There are no recipes, no accounts from travelers who encountered coal miners eating this dish. No regional cookbooks from the Apennine areas recording it as a local tradition. It is an origin story that feels right and sounds right and has zero paper trail to support it. A theory with no documentation versus a timeline that lines up almost perfectly with a documented historical event. As origin stories go, one of these has evidence behind it. The other has a feeling. So, the verdict. The evidence, taken as a whole, points in one direction. Carbonara as we know it, as the world knows it, did not exist before World War II. There is no credible documentation for it before 1952. The timeline of its emergence aligns directly with the American military presence in Rome in 1944. And the ingredient at the center of every authenticity argument, the insistence on guanciale over bacon, may itself be a later substitution, not an ancient tradition. My verdict is this. Carbonara was born in Rome in 1944, but it was not born from Roman culinary tradition. It was born from the collision of Roman ingenuity and American military rations, in a city that was starving and desperate and doing what humans have always done, making something beautiful out of whatever they had available. It is an American idea, perfected by Italian hands. And Italy, perhaps without fully realizing it, or perhaps with complete awareness and a very deliberate choice, took that wartime survival dish and turned it into something that now represents their national identity. That is not fraud. That is not theft. That is one of the most impressive acts of cultural alchemy in the history of food. But here is what I keep coming back to. Here is the thing that makes this story bigger than pasta. Italy in 1944 was broken. The war had taken almost everything. The food was gone, the infrastructure was gone, the dignity that comes with feeding yourself and your family was gone. And into that moment walked a foreign army carrying tin cans of powdered eggs and processed bacon. What happened next is extraordinary. Roman cooks didn't just survive on those rations, they transformed them. They took something that was functional and foreign and emergency grade, and they applied centuries of instinct to it. They understood texture and fat and heat in a way that no army ration designer ever could. And they created something that would eventually be considered a masterpiece. That is what culture actually is. It isn't a fixed ancient thing that must be protected behind glass. It is a living process. It absorbs, it adapts. It takes tragedy and makes it taste like a triumph. The Romans didn't invent carbonara out of centuries of tradition. They invented it in a moment of desperation. And that, honestly, makes it more impressive, not less. So next time you're in Rome, and you order the carbonara, and it arrives perfect and golden and nothing like anything you've ever made at home, raise a quiet fork to the GIs who accidentally started it. Just don't mention the bacon to the chef. Some truths are better enjoyed in silence. American accident or Italian masterpiece? What's your verdict? Tell me in the comments.